Electric vehicles in India 2030. India can become the first country of its size which will run 100% of electric vehicles. We are trying to make this program self-financing. We don't need 1 rupee support from the government. We don't need 1 rupee investment from the people of India, Power Minister said at an event organized by CII Young India here. Elaborating further, he said, "We are working. Can we actually give electric car for free and people can pay for that out of the savings on the petroleum products? Innovation is possible, it just needs an open mind. You need to think of scale and be honest." Speaking at the annual convention organized by Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers to discuss sustainable growth initiatives for the automobile sector, Union Road Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari said that petrol and diesel vehicles will need to make way for engines running on electricity and other alternative fuel variants such as CNG, biofuel and ethanol. Adding that this was a part of the government's larger plan to have only e-vehicles in India by 2030, Gadkari also advised the auto industry to innovate, research and work on new, non-polluting technologies or risk being overtaken by inevitable policy change. He added that the government is also planning a platform that would facilitate use of two-wheelers as a taxi, thus reducing the number of cars on the roads. While alternative transport solutions are good news for India's choked and polluted roads, the veiled ultimatum by the Transport Minister has also raised concerns about the feasibility of the government's plan to have an all-electric passenger car market in India by 2030. The government plans to buy 10,000 e-cars for the National Capital Region in the next 6 to 8 months. This is a part of the government's plan to put around 1 million electric three-wheelers and 10,000 electric city buses on Indian roads by mid-2019. The tender to buy 10,000 e-cars for NCR has already attracted bids by 6 of the nation's leading car makers. Apart from e-cars, the state-owned Energy Efficiency Services Limited has also invited bids for 4,000 chargers that will be set up in Delhi and NCR for the convenience of e-vehicle users. This expected to boost public demand for e-cars in the region. Fiscal incentives such as tax breaks shall also be given to automobile manufacturers to encourage increased production of e-vehicles. This step will be followed by the government inviting bids for 50,000 electric three-wheelers and battery-powered buses. Interestingly, Mahindra and Mahindra Limited has just launched its first electric three-wheeler that goes on sale from September called the Alpha Mini. It is powered by a 120Ah battery and aimed at intra-city movement. On a full charge, it can travel for up to 85 kilometers at its top speed of 25 km/h. An effort will be made to recreate the LED moment in Indian transport. The LED moment refers to what was famously called the largest energy transformation project in the world by the Vienna Energy Forum, India's effort to replace over 700 million street and household lights with energy-saving and long-lasting LEDs, taking electricity to thousands of poor villages for the first time. The competitive procurement of LED lights by ESL had also helped prices crash in the open market, making it affordable for consumers to buy LEDs for their homes. A similar competitive tendering for electric vehicles as well as their batteries is expected to help bring the capital costs of an e-vehicle within a price range that will be lower than that of a petrol, diesel vehicle. Steps have already started being taken in this direction. In 2017, Nagpur became India's first city to have a fleet of 200 electric vehicles, including taxis, autos, e-rickshaw and buses. The country's first multimodal electric vehicle project was also inaugurated at the Nagpur Airport complex, making Maharashtra the first Indian state to provide such incentives to e-vehicle users. Popular taxi aggregator Ola has also established over 50-plus charging points at 4 strategic locations across Nagpur. The government will set up industries for the 9 production of second-generation ethanol. Under the roadmap laid down by the National Policy on Biofuels, the government had expected to achieve its ambitious target of 20% ethanol petrol blending by 2017. However, due to the shortage of availability of ethanol for transport industry, this target couldn't be achieved. India is currently doing less than 3% of ethanol petrol blending. To fill in this demand-supply gap, the government has decided to start 15 industries for production of second-generation ethanol cellulosic ethanol made from agricultural residues such as the stalks, leaves, bagasse, bamboo, sawdust, and husks of rice and wheat. A cost-effective and non-polluting fuel, it is a great way to tackle the twin problems of rising pollution and an increasing import bill for crude oil. Government still focused on having only electric cars in India by 2030. Union Power Minister today said the world is moving towards electric vehicles and the government is working on a roadmap to ensure all electric car fleet in the country. The minister further said that although hybrid cars have cut down the fuel consumption a little bit, India will promote electric vehicles because it is the future. However, he admitted that it may take a little longer to replace existing petrol and diesel vehicles in the country. Only electric car by 2030. Existing cars may take a little longer to replace. But the government is working on a framework to see what we can do on promoting electric vehicle. Niti Aayog is currently tasked with preparing futuristic vision for electric vehicles, he told reporters at a CII event. On hybrid cars, he said, it reduced fuel consumption a little bit but the future is all electric cars. I had also recommended to the finance minister that it is not advisable for an intermediate technology which reduces the fuel consumption by a little bit but otherwise that is not the future is all electric cars. Talking about lobbying for hybrid cars, he said, it is a campaign being run by those companies who don't have electric vehicles. These companies have come to me also to convince not to oppose hybrid cars. The world is moving towards electric vehicles and the country would promote electric vehicles. On certain coal mines being shut down, he said, I have informed the House that any unsafe mine will be shut. On another round of coal mine auction being planned by the government, the minister said, we may possibly make it more simplified framework. But there is no change in the fact that we will only give out coal blocks by auction to private sector and to public sector we can do allotments. On the GST for equipment used for solar energy like wire or storage batteries, he explained that all those equipment will get input credit which would ultimately result in total tax incidence of 5% on the renewable source as announced by the government earlier. About the PSU ETF Bharat 22, he said. Shareholding of government in NTPC has been moved to exchange-traded fund Bharat 22. It is a wonderful move. It will help the government garner resources while keeping the public sector character of company intact. It is a win-win situation. He also said that during this year around 1.2 crore or more subscribers were enrolled in the Employees Provident Fund system amid some claiming jobless growth in the country. For the latest auto news and reviews, follow Car and Bike on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every car sold in India from 2030 will be electric, under new government plans that have delighted environmentalists and dismayed the oil industry. It's hoped that by ridding India's roads of petrol and diesel cars in the years ahead, the country will be able to reduce the harmful levels of air pollution that contribute to a staggering 1.2 million deaths per year. India's booming economy has seen it become the world's third largest oil importer, shelling out $150 billion annually for the resource, so a switch to electric-powered vehicles would put a sizable dent in demand for oil. It's been calculated that the revolutionary move would save the country $60 billion in energy costs by 2030, while also reducing running costs for millions of Indian car owners. Air pollution, a big problem in India. More than 1 million people die in India every year as a result of breathing in toxic fumes, with an investigation by Greenpeace finding that the number of deaths caused by air pollution is only a fraction less than the number of smoking-related deaths. The investigation also found that 3% of the country's gross domestic product was lost due to the levels of toxic smog. In 2014, the World Health Organization determined that out of the 20 global cities with the most air pollution, 13 are in India. Efforts have been made by the country's leaders to improve air quality, with one example coming in January 2016 when New Delhi's government mandated that men could only drive their cars on alternate days depending on whether their registration plate ended with an odd or even number. While such interventions have enjoyed modest success, switching to a fleet of purely electric cars would have a much greater environmental impact. Indeed, it's been calculated that the gradual switch to electric vehicles across India would decrease carbon emissions by 37% by 2030. Oil firms facing uncertain future. As India's ambitious electric vehicle plans begin to take shape, oil exporters will be frantically revising their calculations for oil demand in the region. In its report into the impact of electric cars on oil demand, oil and gas giant BP forecast that the global fleet of petrol and diesel cars would almost double from about 900 million in 2015 to 1.7 billion by 2035. Almost 90% of that growth was estimated to come from countries that are not members of the OECD, such as India. Last month, the Chinese confirmed they intend to push ahead with plans that will see alternative fuel vehicles account for at least 1/5 of the 35 million annual vehicle sales projected by 2025. Oil bosses claim it's too early to tell what the implications of a move away from petrol and diesel cars will be. However, Asia has long been the main driver of future oil demand. And so developments in India and China will be watched extremely closely. India is a lucrative market for automobile manufacturers, driven by a huge consumer base and robust demand. The passenger vehicle market in India is growing at a healthy pace, and the trend is likely to continue with rising income levels, low penetration level and better financing options. EVs are far from mainstream in India, and thus there is minimal presence of electric cars, resulting in an unexplored EV market. Thus, there lies great opportunity for automobile players to come in early and grab a share of this nascent market, given the government's idea to move away from fossil fuels.